The impala's leg snapped sideways mid-stride, and for a full second, gravity just forgot about the rest of her body. She was already airborne when the lioness's claws raked across her hindquarters, 4 parallel lines opening up like someone dragged a rake through wet clay. No blood came out yet. That's the part nobody tells you. The body hadn't gotten the memo. She hit the ground, rolled, and instead of screaming, because prey animals rarely scream, screaming is for later. Screaming is a luxury. She went completely eerily silent, limp, eyes half open, tongue slightly out, dead weight in a predator's mouth. The lioness, mid-victory grip, paused. And in that one single biologically catastrophic pause, the dead impala's back legs detonated like 2 loaded springs, caught the lioness square in the ribs, and she was gone, sprinting, full stride, blood finally arriving to the wound about 4 seconds late, like a coworker who shows up right as the meeting ends and says, "Sorry, traffic." Yep, that's me. You're probably wondering how I ended up here. Oh, hey there. I wasn't the impala, for the record. I wasn't even the lioness. I was the idiot standing about 60 meters away with a camera and an unreasonable amount of confidence. And let's just say my own near-death escape did not go nearly as well as hers did. Mine involved a different set of teeth, a much dumber decision, and an ending you don't recover from. That's a story for later. Possibly literally later in this video. But that impala, though, I've been watching her and 10,000 animals like her for what I can only describe as an inconvenient amount of free time. Turns out death doesn't come with a schedule, but it does come with excellent seats to nature's most violent theater. And after watching this exact scene play out again and again across species, continents, and centuries, I started noticing something wildlife documentaries almost never explain. Nobody talks about what's actually happening inside an animal's body during those seconds. Not the drama, not the chase. The biology, the stuff underneath the fur and scales that decides in real time whether an animal lives or simply becomes part of the food chain's paperwork. So that's what we're doing today. We're going inside the body during the worst 4 minutes of an animal's life. Let's get into it. Here's the first myth you've probably absorbed without realizing it. That fight or flight is one single reflex, like flipping a light switch. It isn't. It's more like a car engine flooding itself with fuel before the drivers even decided which direction to point the wheel. The moment a prey animal detects a threat, sound, smell, shadow, vibration, its adrenal glands dump a cocktail of adrenaline and noradrenaline into the bloodstream within about 2 seconds. 2 seconds! That's faster than you can say, "Oh no." Heart rate in a startled deer can rocket from a resting 60-70 beats per minute to over 200 almost instantly. For comparison, that's the difference between a jogger and an F1 engine at redline. Except the F1 engine didn't consent to any of this. But here's the part that gets skipped. This isn't just more energy. The body is simultaneously shutting things down. Digestion halts, blood gets redirected away from the stomach and intestines and funneled into the big running muscles, the ones actually useful for not dying. This is why you'll sometimes see a fleeing animal defecate mid-sprint. It's not embarrassment, it's the body going, "We are not processing lunch right now, we are processing survival," and just evicting whatever's in there to save weight and redirect blood flow. Evolution does not care about your dignity. Evolution cares about your mitochondria. Fast fact 1. A gazelle's heart, under extreme stress, can pump blood at a rate that would be equivalent to a human heart trying to move roughly 5 gallons of blood per minute instead of the normal 1.25. Your heart, doing that, would probably rupture. Their heart just says, "Cool, let's go," and does it anyway. You've heard people who survived a car crash say time slowed down. Animals experience something similar, and for once, science actually backs this up. Sort of. During extreme threat, the amygdala, the brain's alarm system, hijacks processing priority. The brain starts laying down memories at a higher density than normal, recording more frames of the experience. Later, when the memory gets played back, it feels like it took longer because there's simply more data packed into it. Time didn't slow down, perception got a higher frame rate. This is likely, not proven with certainty in most wild species, but strongly supported in mammals, including humans, a shared trait across vertebrates with an amygdala, which is most of us. This matters biologically because it means the prey animal isn't reacting slower during a chase, it's reacting to more information per second than usual, which is why a rabbit can juke at an angle that looks to us physically unreasonable. It's not psychic, it's just running on an upgraded processor for about 11 seconds, powered entirely by pure terror. Which brings us to something even stranger. Let's go back to my impala friend. Playing dead sounds voluntary, like an animal thinking, "Ah, yes, I shall now perform the ancient art of being fake dead." It is not voluntary. It's called tonic immobility, and it's a full-body, involuntary, hardwired reflex triggered by extreme restraint or terror, the same category of response you see in sharks when flipped upside down, in chickens when pinned, in opossums and in some insects, and yes, in impalas caught mid-bite.
During tonic immobility, muscle tone changes dramatically. Heart rate can actually drop rather than spike, breathing shallows out, and the animal becomes essentially unresponsive to pain and touch. This isn't strategy in the way we think of strategy. The animal isn't calculating predators lose interest in dead things. It's an ancient reflex that over evolutionary time happened to save enough lives that it stuck around. Evolution doesn't design geniuses. It just keeps whatever accidentally works. And here's the twist that documentaries almost never mention. Tonic immobility can end just as suddenly and violently as it began. The nervous system isn't asleep, it's coiled. The moment restraint loosens, even slightly, it can snap back into full sprint mode within a fraction of a second, which is exactly what turned my impala's lucky pause into her escape. This is where I have to be honest with you because I promised I wouldn't make things up just because they sound cool. We do not know with certainty whether prey animals experience playing dead the way we'd experience fear-induced paralysis. What we do know, the physiological markers, heart rate, hormone levels, brain activity in species we've studied, closely resemble acute panic states. It is likely the animal is not calm during this. It is likely locked in a state that is, biologically, closer to overwhelmed shutdown than clever deception. Informed hypothesis, not settled fact, but a compelling one. Myth 1. True or false? Opossums choose to play dead as a clever trick. Verdict? False, sort of. It's not a choice. It's an involuntary response so extreme that opossums can remain in tonic immobility for up to 4 hours, sometimes accompanied by a foul-smelling fluid released from glands near the tail, which, fun bonus feature, also makes them smell like they've already started decomposing. It's not a bit. It's a full-body, unconsensual, extremely committed performance with zero rehearsal and zero awareness, which honestly is how most of my performances went too. Here's the part that made me start actually caring about this topic instead of just narrating it. Escaping doesn't mean you're safe. Sometimes escaping is what kills you. There's a real documented phenomenon called capture myopathy. It happens in deer, antelope, and other hoofed animals that undergo extreme, prolonged chases or struggles, sometimes during a predator attack, sometimes during human capture for tagging or relocation. The muscles, pushed into extreme anaerobic overdrive, build up so much lactic acid and generate so much internal heat that muscle tissue actually starts to break down, a process called rhabdomyolysis. This floods the bloodstream with muscle proteins that can shut down the kidneys. The animal can run for its life, win, escape completely, and then die of internal organ failure hours or days later. Nature does not do participation trophies. Sometimes the prize for surviving the chase is a slower, quieter death that nobody's filming. Wildlife veterinarians studying capture myopathy in African antelope species have found post-chase mortality can occur in a meaningful percentage of animals subjected to prolonged high-stress pursuit, even when no physical wound was inflicted. To put that in perspective, imagine winning a marathon and then 2 days later your legs simply stop working because you ran it too hard. That's roughly the internal equivalent of what's happening. The chase isn't over when the chase is over. But before we get too grim, let's talk about the animals that turned this whole survival system into something closer to a magic trick. Certain lizard species practice caudal autotomy, the deliberate detachment of their own tail when grabbed by a predator. The tail doesn't just fall off. It's a pre-built structural weak point in the vertebrae, engineered by evolution specifically to snap cleanly under stress, with the muscles clamping down instantly to control bleeding. Here's the part that never makes it into the highlight reel. The detached tail keeps moving independently for minutes, twitching, flopping, sometimes in a rhythmic pattern that mimics the lizard's normal panicked movement. This isn't a leftover nerve spasm winding down. It's an actively coordinated decoy, powered by local nerve clusters in the tail itself, essentially running its own tiny survival program with no brain attached. While the predator is mesmerized by a body part throwing its own independent farewell party, the actual lizard is sprinting away, several tail lengths poorer and considerably less photogenic. This is less master strategist and more tiny lizard that just donated a limb to a distraction fund it didn't even know it had open. The trade-off is real, though. Regrowing a tail costs enormous metabolic energy, and the replacement is usually cartilage, not bone, weaker, shorter, and a visible signal to future predators and mates that this lizard has already used its one emergency parachute. Speaking of terrible decisions, let's talk about the fish who scream without making sound. Many fish species, especially minnows and their relatives, release a chemical alarm substance from specialized skin cells the instant their skin is torn. During a predator strike, for example, scientists call it schreckstoff, German for scare stuff, which honestly might be the most accurately named discovery in the history of biology. This chemical spreads through the water and triggers immediate involuntary fright responses in every nearby fish of the same species, freezing, scattering, diving for cover, even fish that saw absolutely nothing. It is functionally a silent scream broadcast through water, except the only way to send the message is by literally being injured. Nature's alarm system requires you to be the alarm. This is why a single successful predator strike in a school of fish can trigger a chain reaction of panic radiating outward in a way that looks almost choreographed. It's not choreography, it's chemistry doing the job cinematography usually gets credit for.
Fast fact 2. Some predatory fish have evolved to specifically avoid injuring prey in ways that release large amounts of schreckstoff because a full-blown chemical panic alarm scares off every other easy meal in the area. Even predators apparently understand the concept of not blowing your own cover. You're a field mouse. It's dusk. You hear nothing. No rustle, no shadow, but suddenly every hair on your body stands on end and your legs are moving before your brain has technically caught up. What just happened? A barn owl, silent-flighted thanks to comb-like feather edges that break up turbulent air, dropped in from above with zero warning. Your ears, proportionately massive, asymmetrically placed for pinpoint sound triangulation, picked up a wing beat frequency below what most animals can consciously register, and your brainstem, not your conscious brain, made the call to move. You didn't decide to run. Something older than your decision-making did it for you. You survive, by the way, in this scenario. Barely. Let's not dwell on the ones who don't. We love talking about speed. Cheetahs, pronghorns, sailfish, all the greatest hits. But almost nobody talks about the actual ceiling on animal speed, which isn't muscle, it's heat. A sprinting cheetah's body temperature can climb dramatically during a chase, and here's the critical detail. If a cheetah's internal temperature crosses a certain threshold, its brain will forcibly shut the chase down, not out of choice, but as a hard biological failsafe against literally cooking its own nervous system. This is why cheetah hunts almost always end within about 20 to 30 seconds. It's not that they run out of desire, it's that their own brain pulls the emergency brake before they self-destruct. Think of it like a phone throttling itself when it overheats, except the stakes are collapse mid-sprint in front of a hungry hyenas instead of your video buffers for a second. Prey animals like pronghorn antelope evolved something closer to a built-in air conditioning system, an oversized windpipe, enlarged lungs, and heart proportionally larger than almost any other land mammal, letting them sustain high speed over much longer distances than the predators chasing them. This is essentially an evolutionary arms race, where one side optimized for a devastating first move and the other side optimized for simply refusing to stop. Myth 2. True or false? Predators always catch the slowest animal in the group. Verdict: partially true, but the mechanism isn't what people assume. It's not usually about raw speed. It's about deviation from the group's movement pattern. An animal that hesitates, changes direction unpredictably, or breaks stride due to injury or distraction becomes dramatically easier to target, regardless of top speed. Predators exploit chaos and inconsistency far more than they exploit slowness. This is closer to a predator running a targeting algorithm than a fitness test. Here's where nature gets weird. Under extreme acute stress, many animals experience something called stress-induced analgesia, a temporary dramatic reduction in pain sensitivity driven by a flood of endogenous opioids and endorphins released during the fight-or-flight response. This is documented across a wide range of species, including humans. This is why you'll sometimes see footage of an animal running full speed on a badly broken leg or continuing to fight with an open wound that would otherwise be immediately incapacitating. The body isn't ignoring the damage out of bravery. It's chemically muting the pain signal because, biologically speaking, pain is a luxury item you can't afford mid-emergency. Feeling the full extent of the injury can wait. Surviving cannot. The bill comes due later, though. Once the threat passes and stress hormones drop, pain sensitivity often rebounds, sometimes to an even higher baseline than before, a phenomenon researchers have observed in stress recovery studies. Nature's payment plan has brutal interest rates. Fight or flight gets all the marketing, but there's a third option that shows up constantly in nature and almost never gets proper credit: freeze. Freezing isn't passivity, it's an active, highly tuned physiological state, reduced movement but heightened sensory input, muscles primed and ready to fire the instant a decision gets made. Deer freezing in headlights isn't confusion, it's a predator evasion strategy that works extremely well against ambush predators relying on movement detection, hijacked catastrophically by a form of light evolution never prepared them for. The freeze response was built for wolves. It was not built for a 2-ton vehicle traveling at 50 miles an hour with terrible timing. This is the evolutionary equivalent of a computer program that ran perfectly for 2 million years, suddenly encountering an input nobody coded for and just crashing. Poor deer. Excellent software, catastrophically outdated hardware for the modern world. Studies on deer vehicle collisions consistently show that freezing behavior rather than fleeing is a major contributing factor, not because deer are unintelligent, but because their evasion algorithm evolved against predators that behave nothing like a car. To put it in perspective, it's like being extremely good at chess and getting challenged to a boxing match. The skill set simply doesn't transfer, and nobody warned you the game changed. And that's half the story. Some prey species don't rely on speed or stillness at all. They fight back with something closer to electronic warfare.
Certain moth species have evolved ears specifically tuned to detect the ultrasonic clicks of hunting bats. When a moth detects an incoming bat's echolocation, some species respond not by simply fleeing in a straight line, but with an erratic, unpredictable, tumbling flight pattern specifically designed to break the bat's targeting solution, essentially jamming the predator's tracking system through chaotic movement rather than raw evasion. Even more remarkable, certain tiger moth species produce their own ultrasonic clicks in response, which some researchers believe function to actively jam or confuse the bat's echolocation processing, similar to radar jamming used in military aircraft. This is a documented area of ongoing research, and while the exact mechanism is still debated among scientists, the core idea, prey using sound to disrupt a predator's biological sonar, is one of the most quietly insane arms races in the animal kingdom, happening every single night, completely inaudible to you, directly above your head. You thought humans invented electronic countermeasures. A moth was doing it before we figured out fire was useful for more than warmth. Fast Fact 3. Bats and their moth prey have been locked in this acoustic arms race for tens of millions of years, meaning some of the most sophisticated signal jamming technology on Earth was fully operational and field-tested before primates had figured out how to consistently walk upright. Every rule in this video has an exception, and this one matters. Freezing, tonic immobility, extreme caution. These strategies exist because, across evolutionary time, they worked often enough to get passed on. But often enough is not always, and this is where individual animals pay the price for statistics that only work out in the animal species' favor on average. Octopuses provide one of the clearest examples. Many species rely primarily on camouflage and stillness as a first line of defense, an incredibly effective strategy against visual predators like fish, but against a predator hunting primarily by smell or vibration, like certain eels, camouflage does essentially nothing. The octopus can be doing everything textbook correct and still get eaten because the defense mechanism and the predator's detection method are simply mismatched. This is less failure and more playing an excellent game of chess against an opponent who brought a shotgun. Evolution optimizes for the average outcome across countless individuals over deep time. It does not optimize for any single animal's Tuesday afternoon. You're a young sea turtle, minutes old, crossing open sand toward the ocean for the first time in your life. Ghost crabs, gulls, and raccoons are actively hunting this exact stretch of beach specifically because it's an all-you-can-eat buffet that reliably restocks itself once a year. Your entire survival strategy is a numbers game. Hatch in overwhelming numbers, all at once, so predators physically cannot eat you all before you reach the water. This is called predator satiation, and it's one of the coldest, most mathematically honest strategies in all of biology. Some of you are statistically guaranteed to die so that the rest of you don't have to. Nobody voted on this. Evolution doesn't take suggestions. Let's return to energy, because this is the detail wildlife documentaries almost always skip in favor of showing you the dramatic chase and then cutting straight to triumphant music. A single high-intensity chase, successful or not, can burn through an enormous percentage of a prey animal's daily energy reserves in a matter of seconds. For smaller animals operating on tighter energy margins, like rabbits or rodents, a handful of close calls in a single day can mean the difference between having enough calories to survive the night and not. This is why prey animals are almost never seen wasting energy on unnecessary motion. Every non-essential motion is a withdrawal from a bank account that predators are actively trying to empty completely. This is also why some prey species have evolved to tolerate remarkably close predator proximity without fleeing, essentially calculating, not consciously, but through evolved instinct, that the energy cost of fleeing outweighs the actual risk at that specific distance. Yes, prey animals are in a sense running a constant real-time cost-benefit analysis. Less graceful gazelle, more tiny caffeinated accountant managing an energy budget that determines whether it lives to see Thursday. Myth 3. True or false? Wild animals live in constant maximum intensity fear. Verdict: false. If prey animals treated every rustle and shadow as a lethal threat, they'd burn through their energy reserves and die of exhaustion long before a predator ever got the chance. Most encounters with potential danger are resolved with low-cost responses: a raised head, a pause, a few cautious steps, with full flight or fight activation reserved for genuine, high-confidence threats. Constant panic isn't survival. It's a design flaw evolution would have deleted immediately. The chase ends, the predator gives up, or the prey vanishes into cover. And then, this is the part nobody films, the body has to come back down from one of the most extreme physiological states it's capable of entering. Cortisol, the primary stress hormone, remains elevated for a period after the acute threat passes, gradually helping restore balance, but also temporarily suppressing immune function. This is a well-documented trade-off. The same hormonal surge that made survival possible during the chase leaves the animal more vulnerable to infection and illness in the hours and days afterwards. There is increasing research interest in whether repeated high-stress predator encounters have longer-term effects on wild animal behavior and physiology, with some studies suggesting effects resembling chronic stress responses in populations facing sustained predation pressure, though this remains an active and evolving area of research, not a settled conclusion.
In other words, surviving isn't the finish line. It's just the point where the invoice for surviving gets issued. Fast fact 4. Elevated heart rate and stress hormone levels in prey animals have been documented to persist for extended periods after a single predator encounter, meaning the chase you see lasting 30 seconds on camera can have physiological aftershocks lasting far longer than the footage ever shows. Let's talk statistics properly, with comparisons, not naked numbers, because naked numbers are useless and slightly rude. Cheetah hunts succeed roughly 1 in every 2 to 3 attempts, one of the highest success rates among big cats, which sounds terrifying until you compare it to lions, whose hunts succeed far less often, frequently below 1 in 5. Imagine a job where you fail publicly in front of your entire community roughly 4 times out of 5 and simply had to try again the next day with your dignity in the dirt. That's a Lion's Tuesday. That's also, frankly, most people's job interviews. Meanwhile, some prey species appear to engage in something researchers call predator inspection, deliberately approaching a resting or non-hunting predator to gather information about its condition, hunger level, or intentions, before deciding whether fleeing is even necessary. This has been documented in various fish species approaching predators, and similar cautious approach behaviors appear in some ungulates assessing resting big cats from a distance. It sounds suicidal. It's actually efficient. Confirming a predator isn't currently a threat saves enormous amounts of energy compared to fleeing from every sighting ever on principle. Sometimes the bravest-looking move in nature is actually the cheapest one on the spreadsheet. I told you my death wasn't as clean as the impala's escape. I won't drag out the details, mostly because reliving it is annoying, and partly because you'd feel obligated to be sad about it, and honestly, I've made my peace with it somewhere around decade 40 of being dead. But here's what I wish someone had explained to me back when my heart still had a job to do. 1. If you surprise a wild animal at close range, resist the instinct to run immediately. Sudden, fast movement can trigger a predator-style chase response even in animals that weren't hunting you to begin with. Slow retreat beats sprint almost every time. 2. An animal that appears frozen or calm up close is very likely in an extreme stress state, not a relaxed one. Approaching closer because it isn't reacting is one of the most common and dangerous misreadings of animal behavior. 3.
Post-escape, animals remain physiologically compromised for a period afterward. If you've stressed a wild animal, even accidentally, even briefly, understand that the encounter isn't over for its body the moment it's out of your sight. 4. Group animals rely heavily on collective vigilance. Disturbing one animal in a herd or flock effectively disturbs all of them, at real energetic cost to every single individual, whether or not you ever see them react. 5. Heat, not muscle, is often the true limiting factor in a chase, for predator and prey alike. This is why extreme midday heat can be genuinely more dangerous to wildlife than an actual predator on a cool morning. 6. The instinct to help an animal that appears to be playing dead or frozen in fear can backfire badly. Approaching or touching it can trigger a violent, panicked reaction from an animal that is, biologically, still in the middle of an emergency. 7. Respect distance always, even with animals that seem unbothered by your presence. Not fleeing yet is a calculation, not permission. I spent a very long time, the dead have nothing but time, it's genuinely our one perk, watching creatures do everything right and still lose, and everything wrong and somehow survive anyway. Turns out nature isn't fair, isn't cruel, isn't rooting for anyone. It's just running the longest, strangest experiment in the universe. One heartbeat, one hormone surge, one impossibly lucky pause at a time. And honestly, watching it unfold over and over for this long, dead or not, remains the best seat in the house. If you want more videos like this, subscribe.